second question from Java is what methods you have used in project of optional class. I hope you well aware of with this optional class, right? Actually, this is a container object kind class. Usually we use this to avoid null checks and null pointer exceptions. So this container object may or may not have the null values in it. So let's here take an example of a class called student, which is a null object itself at runtime. But we don't know what actually it came from the DB. Then if we are trying to access any properties from it without checking the object for the null, then obviously we'll get a null pointer exception at runtime. Then it stops the execution for the remaining code from there, which is abnormal and we don't want it at runtime, right? So this is where optional class comes handy. There were two ways we can create an object using optional. Suppose if you want to create a string object, you can declare and initialize it using optional.off or optional.ofNullable. In the first case, it creates an optional with the specified non-null value, and in the second case, it creates an optional that may hold a null value. Here the key difference is, in the first case we know the value is not null, but in the second case we don't know at runtime what getValue method will return. So that's why the second variable may hold a null value. With the optional object, we have three methods, that is isPresent, ifPresent and get. Using isPresent method, we can check there is no non-null in the object and we can access the values in that object. Also, we can use get method along with ifPresent to access the object and using it to print the value. And coming to the optional of NullAble, it provides three methods, that is orElse, orElseGet and orElseThrow. So by those method names you can guess what they will do. Using orElse, we can assign a default value to the object if the object is null or empty, and while accessing the same optional object using orElseGet, we can access the value safely. And finally, orElseThrow will help us to throw the runtime exception or the customized exception if there is no value present in the optional of NullAble object. The optional of NullAble also provides some more useful methods, that is filter, map and flat map. You might have heard the names of these methods in the Java streams, right? So here with optional also, these methods behaves the same. Filter method is used to filter the object based on defined criteria, and using map we can return the value, that is mapped value from the non-null object. Similar to the map function, flat map returns the optional value instead of returning the values from the original object. And the last notable point using optional is, for streams, Java 9 and later, if a value is present in the optional object, it returns a sequential stream containing only that value, otherwise it returns an empty stream. Overall, I am putting one example here which we will use in our day-to-day projects for optional. Here in the first method, that is find user by ID, we are trying to fetch a user from the database, assuming user repository is connecting with the database. And in process user method, we are calling this find user by ID, and we are accessing and printing the username using ifPresent or else safely. If user is present, we are printing user found with username, else user not found. So that is all about the optional class and the optional objects which will be used for null checks and avoid the null pointer exception.